Hello everyone, my name is Sang Kim, and I am a student in the Empire Learning course. Have you ever argued with someone and felt like you were living in two completely different realities? You look at the same facts, but you see completely different truths. I call this fundamental difference the architecture of understanding. This concept is not just a catchphrase to me. It is the name of the passion that drives my entire academic journey at Cengage. Today, I wanted to talk about my quest to build a bridge between two seemingly opposite worlds, the biological machinery of neuroscience and the moral agency of philosophy. My passion sits at the violent collision of two massive tectonic plates, the hedgehog of biological determinism and the fox of moral responsibility. Let me share the personal moment this collusion became real to me. In my second year of high school, there was a student in my class with borderline intellectual functioning. He often struggled to regulate his emotion and would inadvertently disrupt our lessons. Science of hedgehog would tell us that his brain simply lacked the wiring for impulse control. It wasn't a choice, it was a symptom of his condition. But here is where the fox entered. Instead of understanding, I watched my classmates and even some teachers react with anger and blame. They scolded him, treating his biological inability as a deliberate moral failing. I stood there, paralyzed by the dissonance. I saw a boy fighting a losing battle against his own biology, while society demanded he act like a normal moral agent. This tension keeps me up at night. The question that haunts me is, if our brains are biological machines, is it fair to hold someone responsible for what they cannot control? My passion is to resolve this contradiction and build a bridge between this disconnected world. Why am I so obsessed with this? To explain, I must refer to Ian Leslie's book, Curious, which we explored in this course. Leslie distinguishes between two types of curiosity. First, there is a diversive curiosity. This is the shallow urge that makes us click on a sensational headline. It craves novelty, but is easily satisfied. My passion, however, is fueled by what Leslie calls epistemic curiosity. This is a deep, sustained desire to build understanding and knowledge. It is the difference between briefly glancing at a map and actually trekking through the terrain. Leslie cites George Lowenstein's information gap theory, stating that curiosity is ignited when we feel a painful gap between what we know and what we want to know. For me, that classroom memory is the most painful gap. I felt a personal responsibility to close it, and I needed to understand how the mechanical meat of the brain can support the heavy weight of our morality. This passion has transformed how I live and learn right here at Cengage University. I view our campus not just as a school, but as a living laboratory for human cognition. Let me share a specific example. A few days ago, after class, when it was night, we had a heated debate about ethics of AI art. One student was furious, arguing that AI steals human creativity. Before finding my passion, I would have just taken a side to win the argument. But applying the scout mindset from critical and rational class, I paused, and I realized this wasn't about art. It was about different cognitive blueprints. And also, I asked to myself, what underlying values are threatened here? For one, it was authenticity. For the other, efficiency. By mapping these blueprints, I was able to mediate discussion. This is how my passion turns everyday conflicts into case studies for cognitive empathy. Looking ahead, this passion will shape both my career and my personal life. Professionally, I aspire to become conflict mediator or neuroethicist. As technology advances, society will face unprecedented questions about responsibility and consciousness. We'll need experts who speak both the language of neurons and the language of justice. I aim to be that translator. Personally, this understanding will help me to become a more patient family member. When our future spouse or child acts irrationally, it is really easy to react with anger. But by understanding the biological reasons behind their actions, I can choose forgiveness over judgment. Understanding the architecture of the mind is, to me, the most scientific way to practice love. To pursue this passion, I have implemented a rigorous three-step system here at Teje: capture, map, and dialogue. Let me give you a fresh example from just a few weeks ago. In our ethics class, we discussed deontology. First, I captured a map the Fox perspective. Immanuel Kant argues that moral duties are absolute, rational laws we must follow, regardless of consequences. Then I researched and mapped the hedgehog perspective. Neuroscience reveals a twist. Studies show that deontological judgments often trigger the brain's emotional centers, specifically the amygdala, not just the logical areas. I found a contradiction. Philosophers call it pure reason, but our brain might process it as a gut feeling. Finally, I moved to the dialogue phase. I sat down with my friends and debate a hard question. Is our noble sense of moral duty actually just a biological alarm bell evolved to keep us in line? By stress testing my theories in these real conversations, I ensure my learning is not just abstract, but alive and growing. In conclusion, the architecture of understanding is not just an academic theory. It is a tool for compassion. There is a fear that explaining the human mind scientifically takes away its mystery. But I believe that understanding the biological limits of our minds does not mean we lose our humanity. On the contrary, acknowledging these limits gives us the capacity to forgive one another more deeply. During my remaining time at Teje, I will continue to build a warm house of philosophy using the cold bricks of science. I aim to be the bridge that connects these two worlds. Thank you for listening.